When I first visited the US as a Prime Minister, India was the 10th largest economy in the world. 10th. Today, India is the 5th largest economy.
We are the 5th. I find it embarrassing to tell others that we are going to overtake them and will be 3rd.
India will have probably the greatest growth rate, the fastest growth rate economically.
Make significant investments in India, which it is something that we intend to do.
तीसरे टर्म में पहली 3 इकोनॉमी में गर्व के साथ हिंदुस्तान खड़ा होगा दोस्तों.
From an infinite workforce because of the growing population to tax cuts attracting companies like Apple and China for production in India, could India's economy grow stronger than China's? Let's find out. China and India are two of the world's fastest growing economies. When measured by nominal GDP, China is the world's second largest economy in 2024, with India ranking 5th. Combined, they account for 20.51% of global wealth in nominal terms and 26.87% in purchasing power parity terms, and they make up more than half of Asia's GDP. But on a purchasing power parity basis, China's GDP of $35,291 billion is 2.4 times larger than India's $14,594 billion. China also reached the $1 trillion mark in 1998, while India did so much later in 2007. But if India makes the right moves, it could lead global growth by 2028. You see, with China slowing down and Western countries seeing it more as a competitor than a partner, India is stepping up as a new potential driver of the world economy. India's stock market is booming, foreign investments are pouring in, and governments are eager to sign new trade deals with its large market of 1.4 billion people. Major companies like Boeing are receiving record orders, Apple is increasing iPhone production, and suppliers are shifting from China to India. But more on that later. Because even with all this excitement, India's $3.5 trillion economy is still much smaller than China's $17.8 trillion economy. Economists say it could take a long time for India to catch up due to issues like poor roads, uneven education, bureaucratic hurdles, and a lack of skilled workers. But India has the potential to become the world's leading contributor to economic growth more quickly. Optimistic investment banks like Barclays believe India can achieve this during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's next term, with his party expected to win the upcoming elections. According to Bloomberg reports, India could reach this milestone by 2028 on a purchasing power parity basis. To achieve this, Modi will need to focus on 4 areas: improving infrastructure, enhancing workforce skills and participation, building better cities to accommodate workers, and attracting more factories to create jobs. So what kind of economic moves could work for them? India's game plan. China's rapid growth began in the late 1970s after it opened its economy to the world. For 3 decades, China grew at an average rate of 10% per year, attracting foreign investment and gaining global influence. Every major company needed a strategy for China. However, China's rapid growth phase is ending, and it now faces a property crisis and growing concerns from Western countries about its control over supply chains and advanced technologies. This is where India comes in. Prime Minister Modi's government is working to make India's economy more competitive, attracting Western businesses looking to diversify away from China. Modi has emphasized India's economic growth in his election campaigns, promising to make India's economy the top in the world if he wins a 3rd term. Government spending on infrastructure has more than tripled in the past 5 years, reaching over $132 billion for the 2025 fiscal year. This could surpass $240 billion when including state spending. Modi plans to invest $1.7 trillion in improving railways, roads, ports, waterways, and other critical infrastructure by 2030. To control inflation, the government has banned exports of wheat and rice and also introduced incentive programs worth around 2.7 trillion rupees to boost domestic manufacturing, offering tax breaks, lower land rates, and capital to set up factories. If they stick to this plan, India's economy is expected to grow to 9% by the end of the decade, while China's growth slows to 3.5%. This puts India on track to become the world's largest growth driver by 2028. India's contribution to GDP would surpass China's by 2037, even in a more conservative scenario where the IMF projects growth of less than 6.5%, and there's a big reason why. The labor advantage. India has a lot of growth potential thanks to its young population, ongoing infrastructure projects, and the chance to expand its middle class to 800 million people. And as expected, this is attracting foreign investment. You see, the big market, possible financial returns, stable regulations, and simplicity of money transfers into and out of the nation all attract new investors in addition to the reduced costs. India's growth is already visible in some areas like aviation. Just last year, Indigo and Air India placed record orders for 970 aircraft with Airbus and Boeing. India's newest airline, Akasa, also ordered 150 jets from Boeing this year. Not only that, but new airports, aviation startups, and increased domestic travel demand from the growing middle class are driving the need for more planes. Indian startup airlines have grown faster than any other in aviation history, creating lots of opportunities. In January, a US company opened a $200 million engineering center in Bengaluru, marking its largest investment outside the US. This is in addition to a $100 million investment in infrastructure and pilot training over the next 2 decades to meet the rising demand for pilots. Economists say that new infrastructure is crucial for faster development. For example, India had about 148 airports last year, significantly fewer than China's, but plans to increase this to 220 by next year. This is great because infrastructure spending creates jobs, reduces logistics costs, facilitates trade, and attracts businesses. In Noida, new electronics factories are rapidly emerging, similar to how manufacturing grew in Shenzhen, China. An Indian contract manufacturer called Dixon Technologies is also building a large mobile phone assembly plant in Noida. Their workforce has grown from around 9,000 before the pandemic to about 26,000 today. Companies like Xiaomi and Samsung are already using Dixon's factories to produce goods for India's growing middle class. Expanding manufacturing is key. The service sector doesn't create enough jobs and usually requires educated workers, whereas manufacturing can employ many less skilled workers. This shift from agriculture to manufacturing is key to the economic development of India. Dixon's chairman, Sunil Vachani, mentions that recruiting workers for their factories from nearby towns in Uttar Pradesh is easy. India is unique in having a population large enough to replace retiring factory workers in advanced economies and China. But until those workers retire, China will stay on top. The reliance on China. Prime Minister Modi is working hard to attract manufacturers to India by offering big incentives like tax cuts, rebates, and capital support. And this strategy has started to pay off, with companies like Apple and Samsung increasing their production in India. But these companies usually assemble phones using parts made in China rather than making them entirely in India. India has lowered tariffs on a number of components used in mobile devices in an effort to increase output and increase export competitiveness. Other industries like textiles and engineering goods are also asking for lower import duties. But despite these efforts, India still relies a lot on China for parts. In 2023, manufacturing made up only about 15.8% of India's GDP compared to 26.4% in China. So even if India's manufacturing sector grows faster than the overall economy, it won't reach Modi's goal of a 25% share in manufacturing until 2040 because labor force participation is a major challenge. In 2022, only 55.4% of India's working-age population was working or looking for a job compared to 76% in China. For women, the participation rate is even lower, with less than a third of working-age women in the workforce. Former central bank governor Raghuram Rajan says India needs to become a more attractive place for both domestic and foreign manufacturers, which means making the workforce more employable. India already has all the top talent and amazing educational institutions, but the average level of skills is not as high as in many other countries. Urbanization is another big issue. Only 36% of India's population lives in cities, compared to 64% in China. India needs more cities and improved infrastructure like railways, airports, and housing to support people moving from rural areas to cities to compete with China. Economist Santanu Sengupta points out the need for better city infrastructure, addressing issues like water supply, traffic, and housing. You see, India has the potential to benefit from the global search for an alternative to China, but it faces challenges like this. Ashok Gupta, chairman of Optimus Infracom, said that while the geopolitical situation presents opportunities, Indian manufacturers are still behind their Chinese counterparts by about 20 years. For instance, a new joint venture with Corning will only finish and fashion smartphone glass, not manufacture it from scratch. In order for India to become the major manufacturing hub, they need to overcome some challenges in workforce participation and urbanization and reduce their dependency on China. But the question is, will overcoming these challenges allow India to become stronger than China? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this.